Now let's solve middle of a linked list on LeetCode. In this problem, we're given the head of a singly linked list and we need to return the middle node of a linked list. Now we have two cases that we can encounter. Either the number of nodes in our list is an odd number, like example 1. In that case, we literally need to return the middle element. The second case is if the number of elements is even. And so as you can see, we're going to have two middle numbers. So in that case, we need to return the right middle number. So the way we're going to solve this is, first of all, we're going to find out the number of elements in our list. So let's go ahead and do that. First of all, we need to create a pointer to our list. So we can call this temp, which is equal to head. So at this point, we're going to have two pointers, the original head pointer, which points to 1. And now we have another pointer called temp, which we can move as we please without changing the list itself or how it looks like. Alright, so also what I'm going to create is a int count equal to 0. Int count is going to track the number of elements that we have went through in our list. So int count is equal to 0, and we're going to say while temp is not equal to null. So while temp is not pointing to a null element, so an element that doesn't exist, temp is going to be equal to temp.next, and then we're going to increment count plus plus. So temp initially points to 1 in this example. Is 1 null? No. So temp is going to be equal to temp.next, which is 2. Is 2 null? No. So 3. And while we look at every node, we're incrementing count plus plus. So count plus plus starts at 0. After we processed 1, it's now 1. After we processed 2, it's now 2. Same for 3, same with 4. Finally here, count is going to be equal to 5, and then we're going to point to a null node so we can leave our while loop. Now that we've established our count, we need to see if it's an odd or even number. And to do that, we're going to use modulo 2. So if count modulo 2 is equal to 1, that means we have an odd number. And then we're just going to say else. And we'll take a look at that later, but this else statement covers the case where we have even number of elements in our list. So if the number of elements in our list is an odd number, what we're going to do is we're going to create another integer variable called count2, and also it's going to be set to 0. And we're going to say while count2 is strictly less than count divided by 2. Before I explain this while statement, I just want to add a line of code here, which is very important, and I forgot to add it. We just want to reset temp, our pointer temp, after this statement to point back to what head is pointing to, which is 1. And now let's explain this. So in Java, integer variables do not store decimals. So a value like 2.5 would be just stored as 2, 3.6 would be just 3, so on and so forth. So when we do count divide by 2, if we have an odd number of elements, like in example 1 where we have 5, 5 divided by 2 is going to be equal to just 2, since we're storing it in an int variable. With that being said, if we're starting at the first element, count2 equals to 0, so our first element is at position 0, what we're going to do in our while loop is the same as the while loop above. So temp is going to be equal to temp.next, and then count2 plus plus. So starting at 0, is count2 less than count divided by 2? So is count2, which starts at 0, less than 2? Yeah, 0 is less than 2. So temp is going to now point at 2, and we can increment count2 to be, now it's 1. And then once again, it's going to check 2. Is 2 null? No, so point to 3, and then increment count2. So now count2 is 2. And that's where we exit our while loop with our temp pointing at 3. So after we exit our while loop, all we need to do is return temp. So our else statement now is going to cover the case where we have an even number of elements. And similarly, what we're going to do is we're going to say int count2 equals to 0. And while count2 is less than count divided by 2, temp equals temp.next, count2 plus plus, and then return temp. So the difference here is that if we have an even number of elements, so here it's 6, 6 divided by 2 is 3. And we're gonna keep processing. Since count 2 starts at 0, we're here. Is 1 null? No, so point to the next one and increment count 2. So count 2 is now 1. Is 2 null? No, so increment or point to the next element, which is 3, and count 2 plus plus. So now count 2 is equal to 2. One more time. Is 3 null? No, point to 4. Count 2 is now equal to 3. Is 3 strictly less than 6 divided by 2, which is 3? Yes, so exit our while loop and return temp. So let's submit our code and see if it works. Oh, small typo right here. List node, not link node. So let's submit again. And there we go. So that was the middle of a linked list problem on LeetCode. I hope you found that video helpful, and thanks for watching.